Hello guys, so welcome to today's tutorial. Today we'll be looking into functions in Python. So let's get started. What are functions? Well, a function is a reusable block of code that performs a specific function. So they help us in breaking down our complex tasks into smaller and manageable units, enhancing the readability and the maintenance of our code, and it also helps us uh, extend the usability. Helps It also helps us in breaking our programs into modules. So basically, what that means is that if you have a block of code that performs a specific task, and you will probably be needing it in multiple places. For example, if I'm writing a program that process text to speech in the program, I might want to feed the program with text at a point. So a part of my program will handle the input accepting of the text. So I might just write that into a function so that I can always recall that function instead of writing that piece of code again. I could just call that function and it will perform the operation any as much time as needed. So I would not be repeating myself by rewriting the code everywhere I need it to receive input from the outside source. So that's basically an example. So we're going to be looking at how we can write functions in Python. So let me just write the definition here for those of you that need definition. So we want to look at an example. How do we create a function in Python? It is very, very easy to create a function in Python. Just like in JavaScript or any other programming language, you start with the function keyword, but for Python, you use the def, which is like the define function, def, and then the name of the function that you want to write. For example, let's have a greet function here. So what does this greet function does? It prints out hello world. So you can see it starts with define and then the name of the function and then the column. So we always use column to end it when we want to create a function, and then the indentation. We go to the next line with the indentation and write our piece of code. Our piece of code that is in this function will be how should I say this now? Our piece of code that we want to exist within this function will be in this one tab space. So you create a tab space, everything should be a tab space. That will tell Python that you are still writing this uh, function. So if we have this, if we run this now, we see that it won't do anything because we've just defined the function, we've not called it. So I said Python uh, function. You can see it didn't do anything because we just defined this function, but we've not run the function. And to run the function, we need to call the function. And how do we call the function? With the name. So we call it a greet. If we do this now and we run it, you see it prints out hello world. So it's not necessary you have hello world here. It can be any piece of code. Remember, a function can be is a block of code that perform a specific task. So this one is just printing out hello world. So let's write another function that sums to uh, okay, let's write a function that receives the name of a person and print out a greeting based on that. So we'll start by defining, writing def uh, greet, let's say user. Okay. I wanted to use camel case. They have forgotten that in Python we use snake case most of the time. Greet, not camel case. Greet user. So all these little things you have to put into remembrance. So then we'll pass in a name variable. Then I want to print out print welcome to the world. And then we need uh, the person's name. So let's save it. So this brings us uh, to the next point, to the next thing we are going to learn about function, which is the argument. So here what we are doing, we are passing an argument. It's called an argument. We are passing a variable called name and we are using it within this function. So this name variable would exist only in this function. It won't exist out of this function. For example, if I do print name here, it will throw an error, print name, to throw an error because it doesn't exist outside of the function. You can see name is not defined. Or in the advent where I print it inside of the function, and I remove this, you can see it ran. No, we've not called it. Sorry, we've not called this function. So we're going to call the function. It's not yet running because we've not yet called the function. So greet user, and we're going to pass a name. Let's give it the name of John Doe. Yeah, let's save that and rerun it. You can see it output John Doe. Welcome to the world, John Doe. You can see that here. Let me put a space here so that we properly format it. Good. And see it prints out. So this becomes the name variable inside of this function here. So it becomes the argument. We call it most times we call it parameter or argument. So this becomes an argument within the greet user function, which we can use within the function and only within the function. It exists within the function. So you can see uh, how that is structured. So let's take a look at another function. This function will sum two numbers together. So let's define it first. Define sum, and remember you say it will sum two numbers. So let's say x. It will receive x and y. And then uh, we can now create a final variable called z equals to x plus y and we can now print out print print x plus space plus y equals z there. Let's now see what it will. Remember this plus what we are is we are using it to combine variable with string to print out variable and string. So it's just like saying print out this variable, then concatenate it with this string, then concatenate it again with this variable. So I think I've talked about this in earlier classes. So we are not summing it here, we are just printing it out. So let's run the code again. I don't think I've saved that. Okay, we've not yet called. Why do I keep forgetting to call the function? So we say here some, let's make it 2 and 4. Let's run it. I'm having a error there. Okay, so the problem is it seems in Python you can't print out concatenate string and int. So you have to first convert the int to string. So let's do that. We'll just wrap, we call the input function str, which is to convert it to string. I'll wrap it with string there. Just going to do that for every integer we have there. Str. So this here should be plus. Let me, so we can see here 2 plus 4 equals 6. That's what we have here. So we can call this function as many times as we want with different parameters. I can say 2 and 5. I can call it again. So I just define the function once and call it multiple times. You know, so imagine I'm writing a whole lot of maybe 1,000 lines of code, and I need to do some additions. Instead of doing these additions over and over again, I can declare a function, and whenever I need to do any addition, I'll just call the function. So that is exactly what a function is used for. We use it to abstract our code and to make it modular and easily readable, and it helps us to restructure our code and prevent us rewriting the wheel every time. So basically, that is that about that. So we've learned about arguments, defining functions, receiving arguments. Now I want to look at also returning a value also. So a function can also return a value. For example, let me say average. Average. Let's define a function of average that receives calculates the average of two numbers and returns the value. So here I can say avg, which is average, is equals to x plus y divided by 2. So I can force this. Okay. The reason I'm putting the bracket is because I'm applying the principle of word mass in programming, you can apply the principle of BODMAS. First, the execution flow uh, by putting this bracket and making sure is doing calculating this as a unit first before dividing by 2. So I can now return average, because sometimes you might not normally automatically remember the principle of BODMAS, which says bracket of addition, division, then subtraction, which is the order of execution of a mathematical sequence, and that is also applied in programming. Programming, when you are doing mathematical operations, it follows the principle of BODMAS. So that principle of BODMAS will define which one does it get to execute first. Anyway, so we are not here to talk about maths. So I can now have a variable. I select my average, my AVG. Oh, I'm using let again. I'm so used to JavaScript. My average will now be equals to, so I can now call average, I'm passing the parameters. So what happens here is that it's when the program reaches here, I'm calling a function here. So it picks this argument, go back to this function, passing the argument. This will calculate it, and then it will return the value of the average. So it will return the value. So returning the value, it will return the value now, and the value gets stored in my average. So if I run it, you won't see anything, or if you want to see anything, we need to print out the average. Let's print out the average here. Print out my average. My average. So I can say, okay, let me do this. Average of 2 plus 5 is equals to plus str. Let's save that. So if we run that, you can now see average of 2 plus 5 is equals to 3.5. So the average is now stored in this variable. So that is how you return a value. It's in a function in Python. So let's look at something else, one other thing, which is modules. How we can import modules using Python. So for Python, we can have a series of code in another file, and we want to use it here in this current file. So for example, here in this utils, I have a multiply function here. So how do I access it in this function here, this function file here? So to do that, the first thing we want to do is we want to import. We'll use the import keyword, which is a keyword inbuilt keyword in Python. Import, and then the name of the file, utils. So we are importing utils, and then once we import it, we can now start using whatever code is there inside of utils. We now have access to it inside of our function here. So let's now see an example. So we can say, let's create a variable named result. Result is equals to utils dot dot what we have multiply there, dot multiply. You can see that it auto suggests, shows me the function I have in the file in utils. It automatically brings it out because it recognizes it as a module. So let's now passing the variable we want to multiply. Let's multiply 5 by 10, which will give us 50. Remember? So doing that, let's print out the value of, let's print out results, or let's, to make code understandable, let's write it 5 multiplied by 10 multiply by 10 is equals to str results. So let's save that and let's check it out. So you can see here 50. So what it did is when it got here, it came to this file, and it called this function, and then come back, returns the value here, and we print it out here. So this can help us in structuring our code, and making it more readable. So we might want to have a list of functions in a different file, and then import it into our file. So this way we can create different files and have access to these utils functions, the functions in utils from different files. So when you're talking about modularity of your code, it makes it more modular. So that is that about that. What else do we need to discuss before we end this tutorial? I'll see you in the next tutorial. Okay, one last thing. Let us look at arbitrary arguments in Python. So what are arbitrary arguments? So let's imagine that you have a function and you don't know the number of arguments that might be received from this function. If you don't know how many arguments that will be passed into your function, you can add a star before the parameter name in the function definition. So this way the function will receive a tuple of arguments. Remember when we talk about tuple? Tuple is like a list, remember? It's like an array and can access the items accordingly. So I'll show you an example there. Let's have a function. Let's call this my function, my underscore function. And then, so we want to receive argument, but we don't know the number of arguments. So we can just say numbers, instead of leaving it like this now, because if you do like this, then that means we are expecting one argument. So to make this function understand that we don't know the number of arguments, we put a star to precede the name of this function. So it will receive it as a tuple, and then we can access it within our function. Now you can say, okay, let's imagine, okay, let's make this names instead. Names. Can then say print the employee name is, remember names position, let's see, 0. So doing that, we can now call the function. Here, my function, I'm passing the uh, arguments. I can say Emily, James, Peter. So if I run this, you will see that it will print out Emily. Now if I change this to 3, okay, let's start with 1. Remember that an array or a tuple starts with index of 0. So this is 0, this is 1, this is 2. So 1 should return James. So let's run this. You can see James there. So automatically you know what 2 will return. 2 will return Peter. Let's try that out. So we've got Peter. Now but what happens if we exceed what was passed? Let's try and see what the error will get. You can see we get index error, tuple index out of range. So when you see this, you know that you are out of range of the items that was passed. So of course you can check the length to know the numbers of items, before processing the data. Yeah, so that brings us to the end of this tutorial. So if you like this tutorial, kindly like and subscribe to my channel. Support a brother and help me grow this channel by subscribing. Make sure you subscribe if you are seeing this video and it's of great help to you. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you subscribe. So kindly like, comment and subscribe to this channel for more informative videos like this. So in the next class we might go into advanced functions to dig deep into functions, before we move on to the next thing. So see you next time. Have a wonderful day.